everyone. In today's video, I want to briefly talk about disaster management. Disaster is defined as a serious disruption of the functioning of a community or society which involves widespread human, material, economic, or even environmental impacts that exceeds the ability of the affected community to cope using their own resources. And disaster management is essentially composed of how we handle or deal with impacts of disasters and the process of how we prepare for, respond to, and learn from the effects of major failures. Though often caused by nature, disasters can also have human origins. So when a disaster occurs, essentially when a hazard impacts the vulnerable community of the society, such as the combination of hazards, vulnerability, and inability to reduce the potential negative consequences of risk results in disasters. Disasters can be classified in various ways. The curriculum for the MPH disaster management here at James Lind Institute covers the different types of disasters in depth. They can be broadly classified into natural, human-induced, complex emergencies, and pandemics. Natural disasters, which occur naturally due to a physical phenomena caused either by rapid or slow onset events that have immediate impacts on human health and secondary impacts using further death and suffering. Some of the examples include geophysical, which includes earthquakes, landslides, tsunamis, and volcanic activities. They could be hydrological, which includes avalanches and floods. They could also be climatological, which includes extreme temperatures, drought, and wildfires. And some of the other types include meteorological and biological as well. These can be characterized in relation to their magnitude or intensity, speed of onset, duration, and even the area of extent. For example, earthquakes are of short duration and usually affect a relatively small region, whereas droughts are slow to develop and fade away, often affecting large regions. The second type is human-induced or human-made disasters. Human-made disasters are events that are caused by humans, which occur in or close to human settlements, often caused as a result of either environmental or technological emergencies. And these can include things like environmental degradation, pollution, accidents, for example, industrial, technological, and even transport, usually involving the production, use, or transport of hazardous materials. The next category is complex emergencies. Now, some disasters can result from multiple hazards, or more often to a complex combination of both natural and human-made causes, which involves a breakdown of authority, attacks on strategic installations, including conflict situations and war. And these can include food insecurity, epidemics, armed conflicts, displaced population. Some of the complex emergencies can also be categorized by extensive violence, displacement of populations, loss of life, widespread damage to both societies and economies, need for large-scale humanitarian assistance across multiple agencies, and also increased security risk for humanitarian relief workers. The fourth category is pandemic emergencies, and this is something that the world has seen up close. Essentially, pandemic is an epidemic of infectious disease that has spread across a large region, which can occur to the human population or animal population and may affect health and disrupt services, leading to economic and social cost. Now, it may be an unusual or unexpected increase in the number of cases of an infectious disease which already exists in a certain region or a population, or it can also refer to the appearance of a significant number of cases of an infectious disease in a region or population that is usually free from that disease. So pandemic emergencies may occur as a consequence of natural or even human-made disasters. And they have in the few of the pandemics that have been included in the curriculum involves, in addition to the coronavirus, we have Ebola, Zika, avian flu, cholera, dengue fever, malaria, and also yellow fever. Now, an important aspect of disaster management is the organization and management of resources and responsibilities for dealing with all the humanitarian aspects of emergencies, in particular preparedness, response, and recovery in order to lessen the impact of disasters. And these frame the phases of emergency management. Here at the James Lynn Institute, the disaster management curriculum emphasizes on these four phases of emergency management and also focuses on its implementation in the real world scenarios. The first phase is disaster prevention. Now, disaster prevention is the concept of engaging in activities which intend to prevent or even avoid the potential adverse impacts through action taken in advance or activities designed to provide protection from the occurrence of disasters. The HYOCO framework is one such plan. It is a global plan for natural disaster risk reduction, which was adopted in 2005 as a 10-year global plan, and it was signed by agreement with 168 governments, which offered guiding principles, priorities for action, and practical means for achieving disaster resilience for vulnerable communities. The second phase is disaster preparedness, which refers to measures taken to prepare for and reduce the effects of disasters, be they natural or human induced. This is achieved through research and planning in order to try to predict areas or regions that may be at risk of disaster and where possible prevent these from occurring or reduce the impact of those disasters on the vulnerable populations that may be affected so that they can effectively cope. Disaster preparedness activities embedded with risk reduction measures can also prevent disaster situations and also result in saving maximum lives and livelihoods during any disaster situation. Again, further enabling the affected population to get back to normalcy within a short time period. The next phase is disaster response or relief. Now, the provision of emergency services and public assistance during or immediately after a disaster in order to save lives, reduce health impacts, ensure public safety, and meet the basic subsistence needs of the people affected. Now, coordinated multi-agency response is very important and vital to this stage of disaster management in order to reduce the impact of a disaster and its long-term results with relief activities, which would include things like rescue, relocation, provision of food and water, provision of emergency health care, of disease, prevention of disease and disability, repairing vital services like telecommunications and transport, and also provision of temporary shelter. The last phase of emergency management is disaster recovery. Now, vulnerability of communities often continues for long after the initial crisis is over. So disaster recovery refers to those programs which go beyond the provision of immediate relief to assess those who have suffered the full impact of a disaster. And it could include activities like rebuilding infrastructure, for example, homes, schools, hospitals, roads, healthcare and rehabilitation, development activities, and also development policies and practices to avoid or even mitigate similar situations in future. This was just a gist of the four emergency management phases. And some of the important or crucial topics that are again discussed in detail in the MPH program here at the James Lynn Institute are the disaster measurement and assessment, incident command system, risk management, disaster communication, psychological impacts of disasters, public health response to biological and chemical weapons, social vulnerability and health security, and also epidemics and human response. Thank you for your time.